starting with the name of Allah, who is most merciful and very gracious. Welcome to this explainer on Modified Pride and Prejudice Part 2. So, get comfortable and let my voice be a guide as we move even deeper into the incredible mysteries of the human heart. Section 1. The Silent Heartbreak. Okay, so right out of nowhere, Mr. Bingley just packs up and leaves for London, taking his sisters and Mr. Darcy right along with him. And then Jane gets this really cold letter from Bingley's sister, basically implying that Bingley is going to marry Darcy's younger sister, Georgiana. Now, obviously, Jane is absolutely heartbroken, but you know what she does? She doesn't get angry. She just quietly, kind of passively, accepts all that deep pain. Elizabeth, on the other hand, she is furious. I mean, she is totally convinced that Darcy sabotaged the whole relationship. You know, some people actually say that silently accepting mistreatment is the highest form of patience. But the reality is that while we absolutely must accept what we cannot change with dignity, we also have to have the courage to take action and actually seek out the truth. Jane is just way too passive in this situation. She literally lets other people dictate her destiny without asking a single question.
Fast forward a bit and months pass. Elizabeth goes to visit her friend Charlotte at her new home. And while she's there, she gets invited to dine with the incredibly wealthy Lady Catherine de Bourgh. Now let me tell you, Lady Catherine is this arrogant, incredibly controlling woman. She basically interrogates Elizabeth, treating her like a lower-class servant for one simple reason: she has less money. It's funny, right? Some people say that immense wealth and high social rank make a person naturally superior, deserving of respect. But the reality is that wealth is really just a temporary condition of this world. A person's true worth, that comes entirely from their character, their modesty, and how kindly they treat those who have absolutely nothing. Sure, Lady Catherine has a massive mansion, but morally speaking, she is severely impoverished.
Section 2. The Disastrous Proposal. So while Elizabeth is still visiting, who should show up but Mr. Darcy? And it's here, during a casual conversation with Darcy's cousin, that Elizabeth discovers this completely horrifying truth. Darcy really was the one who convinced Bingley to abandon Jane. As you can imagine, Elizabeth's blood absolutely boils.
And it all comes to a head that very evening. Darcy comes to see Elizabeth completely alone. He's pacing around the room, breathing heavily, and then, suddenly, he proposes to her. But wow, it is a truly disastrous proposal. I mean, he literally tells her he loves her against his will, against his reason, and against his character. He actually spends half the proposal explaining how inferior her family is and how degrading it is for him to even ask her. Obviously, Elizabeth is completely outraged. She rejects him flat out, accusing him of ruining her sister's life and destroying the innocent Wickham. Darcy is just shocked. His pride is deeply, deeply wounded, and he storms out in a bitter rage.
Some people might tell you that in love, being brutally honest about someone's flaws is some sort of sign of superiority. But the reality is that true love requires deep humility. If you truly, genuinely care for someone, you definitely do not sit there and list all their inferiorities while asking them to share your life. No, you honor them. You make them feel safe, and you make them feel respected.
Section 3. Confronting the Dark Truth. Okay, so the very next morning, Darcy approaches Elizabeth and hands her a letter. And in this letter, he lays out the absolute truth, completely stripped of any pride. He admits, yes, he separated Bingley and Jane. But he explains he only did it because Jane hid her emotions so incredibly well that he genuinely believes she didn't love Bingley. That, and, well, Mrs. Bennet's behavior was deeply inappropriate. But then he drops a bombshell. He reveals the dark truth about the charming Mr. Wickham. It turns out, Wickham was a gambler. He wasted his entire inheritance, demanded even more money, and when Darcy refused him, Wickham secretly tried to elope with Darcy's innocent 15-year-old sister just so he could steal her fortune.
Now, let's talk about confirmation bias for a second. It's this psychological concept where we basically only listen to what proves us right. When Elizabeth reads Darcy's letter, her entire world just shatters. She realizes the profound mistake she made. You see, she had already decided she hated Darcy, right? So she easily, almost eagerly, believed Wickham's lies because they perfectly fed into that pre-existing hatred.
It's a common trap, you know? Some people believe that admitting you're wrong somehow makes you weak, and that a truly strong person always just sticks to their first opinion no matter what. But the reality brings us right back to that concept of confirmation bias we just talked about. We only want to listen to what proves us right. And overcoming that is incredibly hard. So when Elizabeth admits to herself that she was entirely blind and totally wrong, that is definitely not a moment of weakness. It's actually the ultimate proof of a strong, noble, and pure character. Because humility is what allows us to seek the truth, even when it really, really hurts our ego. Section 4, Neglect and True Character. So Elizabeth heads back home, and she decides to keep Wickham's dark secret under wraps to prevent a massive scandal. But soon after, the military regiment prepares to pack up and move to the coastal town of Brighton. Now Lydia, who is the youngest and by far the most wild of the Bennet sisters, she absolutely begs to go with them. Elizabeth actually goes to her father and urgently warns him that Lydia is completely out of control and that sending her is downright dangerous. But Mr. Bennet, he just wants some peace and quiet, so he completely ignores the warning and lets her go anyway.
You hear it a lot these days. Some people say that teenagers should just be left alone to figure out life, right? That parents should try to be more like friends rather than guides. But the stark reality is that this is one of the worst possible failures a parent can commit. Parents actually have a sacred, God-given responsibility to actively guide, to set strict boundaries, and to protect their children from the very real dangers of the world. Because at the end of the day, neglect disguised as freedom, it always leads to destruction.
Meanwhile, while Lydia is off in Brighton, Elizabeth goes on a trip with her aunt and uncle up to Derbyshire, and while they're there, they decide to visit Pemberley, which is Mr. Darcy's magnificent estate. Now they only go because they firmly believe he's far away at the time. The estate itself is just breathtaking. But you know what strikes Elizabeth the most? It's the housekeeper. The housekeeper speaks about Mr. Darcy with this immense, genuine warmth. She goes on, saying he is the kindest master, incredibly generous to the poor, endlessly patient with his servants, and a deeply devoted brother.
It's a huge wake-up call for Elizabeth. Some people say you can judge a person by how they act at a fancy social gathering. But the reality is that a person's true character is really proven by how they treat those who work for them, those who are weaker than them, and crucially those who can offer them absolutely nothing in return.
Section 5, Virtue in Times of Crisis. So, out of nowhere, Darcy himself suddenly appears at the estate. But here's the crazy part. He is a completely changed man. All that previous arrogance is just gone. He is warm, he's polite, and he treats Elizabeth's middle-class aunt and uncle with total, absolute respect. Elizabeth's heart really begins to change towards him. But then, disaster strikes. A letter arrives with terrible news. Lydia has run away with Wickham. They've completely disappeared into the dark streets of London, and it turns out Wickham has absolutely no intention of ever marrying her. This means total, permanent ruin and disgrace for the entire Bennet family. Mr. Bennet searches frantically, but completely fails to find them. Elizabeth, literally weeping, tells Darcy the horrific news, fully expecting him to just turn and run from her disgraced family forever.
Darcy does leave quietly, but here's the thing. He doesn't run away. Instead, he goes straight into the absolute worst parts of London. He personally hunts down Wickham and discovers the massive debts the guy has racked up. So what does Darcy do? Using his own vast personal fortune, he pays off every single one of those debts. He literally buys Wickham a career, and he physically forces him to marry Lydia just to save the Bennet family's honor. And the most incredible part, he does all of this in absolute secrecy. He demands zero thanks and actually lets someone else take the credit for the whole thing.
So what does this all mean for us? Well, some people say that a person who speaks sweet, charming words is the best kind of friend you can have. But the hard reality is that words are incredibly cheap. Wickham, he had the perfect smile, but his actual actions were cowardly and deeply destructive. Darcy, on the other hand, had this incredibly proud exterior, but his actions were sacrificial, protective, and just deeply honorable. Because true virtue, that is proven in times of crisis. The one who actually spends their own wealth and energy to protect the honor of others, especially people who previously insulted them, and does it without seeking any applause whatsoever, that person has a truly purified heart. So it leaves us with a pretty big question. In your own life, are you being swayed by cheap, sweet words? Or are you looking for those sacrificial, protective actions that prove true virtue?